Okay. So hi, everyone. Welcome to today's open call. My name is Michelle Suarez. My pronouns are she, her, they, them. I am the Community Outreach Coordinator for Public Lab. I am based in Seminole and Miccosukee Indigenous Territories, also known as Florida. If you're not familiar with Public Lab, this is an organization working towards advancing community science and open source technology and information to support environmental justice causes. Open Call is an open virtual space for staff, newcomers, and the general Public Lab community to join and share questions, ideas, and comments on any of our programs available, including research, education, kits, and organizing. If you would like to join future open calls, please visit our website and our calendar. I'm going to post it in the chat. Okay. And yeah, so for today, for our organizing open call, we have one of our fellowship teams, the Game Over Formosa Plastics team, that has been working for the past 9 months on collecting particulate matter and other air quality data to grow the body of evidence on the existing levels of pollution and to show the pollution burden already borne by the St. James Parish community, a historically Black neighborhood in Southeast Louisiana that has been extremely overburdened by industrial pollution. There's no less than 11 industrial facilities, including refineries, a fertilizer plant, a steel company, and an asphalt company, along with several chemical companies, including the proposed Formosa Plastics, which the community has been working hard to stop. We have done introductions, so without further ado, I'm going to pass it to the Game Over Formosa Plastics Fellowship team.
Hey everyone, and again, I'm Allison. If you weren't here when I introduced myself, we're part of the Game Over Formosa Plastics Fellowship team with Public Lab, spearheaded by Travis London, who will tell you a lot more about this project in a couple of minutes. So we've been working on this since about December of this year, but we're just a small part in a much larger fight against Formosa Plastics, which is a Taiwanese plastics conglomerate that has environmental human rights abuses cited all over the world, and they want to build a $9.4 billion petrochemical facility in South Louisiana in St. James Parish. So our work is just part of that much larger fight of resistance against not only Formosa Plastic, but a bunch of incoming facilities in the area. We're going to tell you more about it right now. So I'm just going to share my screen and put it in presenter mode. Let's see. Slideshow. All right, can everybody see my presentation?
Yep, we're good.
All right, thanks, Caitlion. Yeah, so thanks for joining us. Today, we'll just talk a little bit. We'll give you a brief project overview, why we're here, what's the work we're doing. We'll go over some of the data and findings that we collected, and then we'll talk about how you can get involved and stay involved. And we'll finish out with a question and answer period. But we wanted to start with a big thank you to our air monitor volunteers. I'm not sure if we have any on the call today, but those of you who volunteered to host a purple air monitor at your home to help collect this data was invaluable to the process of this project. And we also want to thank Scott Eustace with Healthy Gulf and Dr. Kim Terrell with the Tulane Environmental Law Clinic, who provided invaluable expertise in helping us get started. And of course, the Public Lab team who funded this project and made it all possible. So what is Formosa Plastics? Now that we've said the name 100 times, it is a 12 billion, not 9.4 billion, 12 billion. The project got larger. Plastics plant. It's an ethane cracker. So they take ethane, which comes from natural gas, and they turn it into plastic pellets, these little tiny white things called like little tiny white pieces of plastic that look like fish eggs. And then they melt it down into water bottles, cellophane wrap, styrofoam, whatever other single-use plastics that make our lives so convenient, right? But that the pellets cause problems. Obviously, the facility emits pollution, and there's going to be 14 different emitting sources in this one complex right there in St. James Parish only a couple of miles from people's homes. So because of the grave environmental impacts that this facility would have on a parish that is already so overburdened with pollution, the community, led by Rise St. James, I know Miss Beverly's on this call, and Travis London and a bunch of other folks who've worked with Rise St. James, Sharon Levine, have done amazing work to resist the construction of this plant. And yeah, because it would be detrimental to the area. So Travis, if you want to talk a little bit more about the Formosa Plastics fight, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Y'all can hear and see me?
We can hear you.
Okay. I'm gonna put the video I'm gonna turn the video off for a sec, cause it was messing up a little bit. All right. Formosa was a threat in Taiwan. There was like mess up a lot of the beach area around there. A lot of workers had got sick, fish got contaminated, a lot of people had lung cancer. They had started also in United States, where in Texas, they were having the little pellets, the little plastic pellets in the waterways, and also the PVC powder that was also in the water as well. A lot of the people that was doing shrimping businesses had went out of business due to these contamination. And they Miss Diane Wilson, she was one of the people that went and challenged Formosa, and she had won a $50 million lawsuit against Formosa. I was honored to be alongside her to do the campaign in Texas, with doing the protesting and also getting with the lawyers to help out with getting her the historical lawsuit. In St. James, we had brought a lot of this information to St. James Parish of the lawsuits, the catastrophe that happened in Texas with the pollution, the catastrophe that happened in Taiwan, alongside the lung cancer findings as well. So the council had totally ignored our evidence. That what made me have went about to try to figure out like how to get like air sampling or soil sampling, water sampling. Scott and some other people had referred me to public lab, and I hired some college kids, and also some college ladies, and also a gentleman that's a former teacher, just showed people that, like, in order to make sure the project would be done right, make sure you got people that already did the work in the community, or actually have like experience in working with the council, and bringing awareness about how it can affect not only the workers that's in the community, but also the kids as well. And that was very important, because this Formosa Plastic plant is going to be right next to a children park. And we had stopped the phase of Formosa doing construction for a while. Right now, we're trying to take on the EIS statement. So this with this air monitoring program would take hold in. We're challenging the air monitoring permits, so we could stop this project from happening and coming in the St. James, so it don't affect our area like it did in Texas and Taiwan and other places that like Delaware and so forth. And I'll pass it back to Allison.
Yeah, so beyond just the environmental impacts, by the way, sorry for the brief interlude to my email. My apologies for that. Beyond just the environmental impacts, there's health and economic impacts. I'll let Caitlion tell you a little bit more about that.
Perfect. Hey, y'all, I'm Caitlion. I'm a recent law school graduate and the policy analyst for this project here. So petrochemical, would you mind going back one slide, Allison? Perfect. Yeah, we want to talk a little bit about some of the existing air quality issues here as well that Travis touched on. So this is, if you're unfamiliar with it, this parish is in the top 95 to 99 percentile for air quality hazards in the entire country. This is one of the most polluted places in the country, and this facility threatens to double a lot of the existing air pollution there. Like we said, we've been working with other groups to do this. So this is a really dire project. Can you go next slide, please? So because of this existing pollution, there are a lot of effects beyond what we would expect: asthma, respiratory diseases. This area is widely known as Cancer Alley because of the string of cancers that have affected this community ever since petrochemical and other development came in. Beyond those, we can quantify some of the impacts in terms of education, seeing impact on teachers. There's a large amount of industrial and residential traffic that passes through the area in terms of heavy vehicles. The Sunshine Bridge, which is where the Sunshine Project is the code name for this proposed Formosa facility. It sounds great and lovely, and that comes from the Sunshine Bridge right by the proposed facility. There's also, by putting more industry in, it creates a perverse incentive in that the more heavy industry exists, the less other industries are going to want to come in. So by creating in an area that is so toxic and polluted that nobody can survive there, it just it disincentivizes anything else for this community other than to continue to be a sacrifice zone. St. James is right on the Mississippi River. Plants pollute and emit into the air and right into the water. And we see a ton of health effects, cognitive, especially for children who are near the plant. This proposed facility is less than 1 mile from an elementary school. In fact, some of the most dangerous and carcinogenic chemicals would be released extremely close, making this elementary school a fence line community. All right, next slide. Now to get into the health aspect specifically of this, this is for our air expert, Tyler.
Yeah, so we've talked a little bit about the pollution in general that Formosa Plastics is expected to emit, and the other plants in the area already emit, but now we'll talk about one in particular, and that's PM 2.5, and that is particulate matter that is 40 times smaller than the width of a human hair. It's particles of dust, smog, and other products of combustion, importantly, that come from petrochemical plants. Think grains of sand or pieces of soot suspended in the air, just microscopic. And because PM 2.5 is so small, it can penetrate more deeply into the lungs and results in numerous negative health effects like heart attacks, strokes, asthma, and the like. And Formosa Plastic is expected to release a lot of PM 2.5 or a lot of particulate matter in general into the air. But that's not the only thing that they do emit. Next slide. Which brings us into why we wanted to study PM 2.5 in particular. We're aware that Formosa Plastics and other plants release a lot of VOCs and carcinogens and all sorts of nasty stuff, but they're pretty difficult and costly to sample and often are only kind of a snapshot in time. And I'll go into why measuring PM 2.5 gives us some advantages over that. For instance, we did look into sampling for VOC, doing some VOC sampling in the area and contracting with a local lab. We would have only been able to get one 24-hour sample for the same cost as buying a purple air monitor that can operate indefinitely for the length of our project and into the future as well. So cost benefit of measuring PM 2.5 was a big deal. PM 2.5 is a major pollutant in the area already. Some Department of Health data we found showed that between 2015 and 2019, average daily concentrations of PM 2.5 were already basically at the EPA annual limit, which is 12 micrograms per meter cube. So it's already high in the area. And the proposed Formosa Plastics plant is currently permitted to emit 340 tons, which would basically double the amount of particulate matter in the air in the region from current levels. Next slide. So PM 2.5 is already bad there, and it's not studied enough. LDEQ and EPA aren't really monitoring it very well. The closest LDEQ air monitoring site is in Thibodaux. I'm sorry, I'm not a Louisianan, so apologies if my pronunciation is bad. But anyway, it's the closest site is not in not in St. James and far from the kind of the plants of concern that are emitting the pollutants right now. So we deployed 3 purple air monitors and in the St. James area and collected data for 3 to 4 months. And I'll go into a little detail about purple air monitors. Yep, here. They use lasers to measure when particles pass underneath. Basically, anytime a particulate goes underneath a sensor, the laser kind of registers that and does some math and quantifies that based on size, et cetera, into a concentration. Many studies shown here have found that they're pretty reliable and accurate for low-cost sensors. I worked with some researchers at Columbia University who used them in projects where you needed just a ton of sensors because buying really high-cost air monitoring equipment can be cost prohibitive in a lot of ways. So yeah, so when you need to put a lot out there, these were great. These 2 research papers that I show there, one looked at purple air monitors deployed in Greece, one looked at them deployed in a lab and calibrated next to a reference grade monitor and found they were pretty good in general, maybe biased a little bit high, but not bad. They correlate pretty well with good reference grade sensors. And the important thing for our work in community science is that anyone who sets up a purple air monitor can connect it to the public map, which means anyone that looks at this map can see what the concentration of PM2.5 is in your area or a nearby neighborhood or next to the school at that moment in time. Yeah, this is the map showing what that looks like. We deployed 3 air monitors in the area, 1 in Welcome, 1 in St. James, 1 in Vacherie. You can see there the pop-up box shows we clicked on Welcome and the concentration of PM2.5 was 29 micrograms per meter cubed at that moment. This was kind of right after we had sort of installed them and we sort of started to see a rising peak of PM2.5. So we were kind of excited to see data, but it was obviously not great to see climbing PM2.5 levels already. So yeah, so those are our 3 sensors there. And I'll go into the data next. So this is a time series of the PM2.5 concentrations in St. James. And St. James had the longest period of uptime of all the sensors, so we'll start there. You can see lots of spikes in the time series and several events where PM2.5 stayed elevated for long stretches of time. The spikes you can see go above those dashed lines, which are the EPA annual and 24-hour standards for PM2.5, which are 12 micrograms per meter cubed and 35 micrograms per meter cubed respectively. So anytime PM2.5 goes above those, it's not good, basically. The standards exist based on the time period. So if it's above 12 micrograms per meter cubed for the whole year, then that's out of compliance. If it's above 35 micrograms per meter cubed for a 24-hour period, that's out of compliance. But breathing high concentrations of PM2.5 isn't good anytime, even if it doesn't rise to the 24-hour standard. Imagine getting a face full of diesel exhaust. Obviously, that's bad. That's not going to be good for your health. And that's not something that would be captured in a 24-hour or annual period. Okay, so moving on to Welcome, we saw previously as well, there's the red arrow pointing to the kind of time period in April to May. Actually, it's in early May. So we see that in Welcome as well. And then if we go to the next slide, it's also in Vacherie. So we kind of captured the same event, which started May 8th and continued for 5 days, where the PM2.5 concentrations rose above 12 micrograms per meter cubed and kind of didn't go down for the entire 5-day period. You can see it dips a little bit, but that was for maybe 30 minutes at a time, a few times. So yeah, we had high concentrations for an extended period of time, which is also not great. Next slide. Okay, this is pointing out the highest peak, the highest spike that we saw out of all the sensors, it was kind of pretty early on in our deployment. We saw a spike that reached 196.73 micrograms per meter cube, which is extremely high. That's like the highest I've seen looking at any of these sensors professionally or just for fun. But yeah, and that's those levels are pretty dangerous for human health. And it wasn't just an isolated event. We saw spikes at both the other sensors as well, but it was highest at Vacherie. Next slide, yes. And so this is the kind of summary table of the data for all of the sites, St. James, Welcome, and Vacherie. You can see the highest PM 2.5 was seen at Vacherie, but you saw pretty high concentrations at St. James and Welcome as well. The one monitor that we had 100% uptime on was St. James during our study period, which we had it up and running for 130 days. And we counted 2,957 spikes of PM 2.5. And we defined a spike as a 10-minute average where the concentration was above 12 micrograms per meter cube. This was about 20.5 days over the total time that was above that standard, or 15.75% of the time. Vacherie, it saw the highest spike and was also similarly had higher proportion of days or amount of time that was above the standard. 21.03% of the total time was above 12 at Vacherie. Welcome was lower than the other two, but it also went offline, unfortunately, in early June. So we didn't have a full complete data set for that. But still, you can see the numbers for Welcome. We still saw more than 1,000 spikes of high concentration PM 2.5.
Right, and then we used all of this valuable data to create a public comment that can be used for the Army Corps' permitting, for LDEQ's air permitting, or for other permit comment periods in which this data is so valuable. Like I've said, there is no publicly available air monitoring that takes place here. LDEQ might have the numbers, but they don't release them. If industry might do monitoring there, but they don't release them. So our project is really some of the very few bit of air monitoring data that exists for this region. So we're able to use that in a comment to say that no, the PM 2.5 is already approaching unhealthy levels too much of the time. That a project like this that is going to double the PM 2.5 in the region is just, it doesn't work for human health, for safety, for environmental concerns. So we incorporate the data into this comment. For a quick update of where this project is at. So anytime that a federal project will have an environmental impact, there's a first step, which is an environmental assessment. And that's just the agencies are saying, is there going to be an environmental impact? And the Army Corps found that there was no significant impact for this project, which is unfathomable. It destroys acres of wetlands. Obviously, the PM 2.5 is a huge issue. And then there's other chemicals released that would have an enormous impact on human and natural health. So the court ordered them to, instead of saying that there's no significant impact, they're now going through the environmental impact statement process, which is much more detailed, which requires them to actually go in, get numbers, talk to the community, have a public comment period for this. So this can be submitted in that. And what's nice that we have this monitor still up and running is that this can continue to produce data. This is our snapshot of this time, but the longer it runs, the more sensors that we're able to bring online, the better that our data will be to present and force them to confront the reality of their situation out here. And it is ready to submit as soon as that process keeps going.
Sorry, I was on mute. Right, so we prepared this comment and hopefully it will support legal action to prevent the construction of the Formosa Plastics plant. In the meantime, our purple air monitors are still deployed. We've got 4 out there and we're hoping to deploy a few more. So if anyone knows folks in the St. James area who would be willing to host an air monitor at their place, we are looking for a few more volunteers on that front. And those who are already hosting monitors, or if you're curious about them, you can always contact Travis London. He is going to continue to be our contact point for these supplies that'll continually gather data. If you want to see the data, we have a link to the Google Drive where we've already collected that information. And there's also a link to our Purple Air website. So if you're interested in viewing the data, drop your name in the chat, and then we'll send out an email with all of that info to those of you who are interested to follow along with it. And another really important piece of this project is, understanding what pollutants are in our air and our water and our soil, is not just gathering data, but of actually reporting it often and frequently to the Louisiana Department of Environmental Quality, which is why Caitlion and I worked with some other advocates in the area to put together an incident report. And it's posted on the website of Rise St. James. You can see the link right here. It's just risestjames.org/incident report. And so if you're out in your community, and this isn't just in the river parishes or in St. James, this could be if you're in New Orleans as well, or in the Gretna, the areas around New Orleans. If you see funny smells, if you see one of the plants is actually flaring, if you smell something sounds weird coming from the plants, you can report that incident. And this guide tells you all about how to do that, because the more we report, that gives LDEQ the ability to actually go and investigate the facilities and say, hey, you're flaring well beyond the limits. But it really accompanies that months or years long data that we're collecting. We also have to be putting in those frequent reports so that LDEQ has the evidence to move forward and check in on those plants. Yeah, so now it's time for a bit of a question and answer session. If Travis or Caitlion or Tyler has anything else they want to add, go for it right now. And if not, we can open up the floor. If you have a question, you can raise your hand, or you can just go ahead and shout it out. Either way. Or you can put it in the chat.
Ben?
Ben, I think you're on mute. Can you unmute?
You're right, I am. Thank you. I'd like to get a paper copy of some of those charts, especially the ones in the particulate matter, but they were all good. If you send it to my email, I could probably download it. I don't have a printer here at my house, but I could probably go to Kinko's and download it. I was wondering if that'd be possible.
I will say a lot of them are published on the public lab site on the Formosa Plastics page. So you, in our monthly updates and the data updates that we did, you can probably find a lot of those there.
All right, thanks.
I have a question about the current status of Formosa in St. James. I had heard that they had their permit pulled by the Army Corps, but I'm not quite sure if that still is the case. Y'all know?
Yeah, Alana, that's what I touched on there. So the Army Corps originally had said that there was no significant impact for that, but then I believe it was like higher up in the Army Corps said, no, we actually need to do the environmental impact statement. So that is currently pending. As of now, they have not opened it up for public comment. They haven't released any draft documents. So at this point, we're waiting on the Army Corps to make a public statement as far as what comes next.
Well, thank you.
Does that answer your question? Yeah, everything from LDEQ as far as like the air permits and that, those are still active. Some permits are set to expire over the next few months, some of the ones for like building or things like that. But the Army Corps, we're waiting to hear from them.
Mm-hmm. And also, if folks are interested in following along with the fight against Formosa Plastics, every Monday at 2 p.m., there is a Stop Formosa Plastics coalition call, spearheaded by Rise St. James, but supported by tons of different groups in the area. And if you're interested to get in on those calls, just drop your email in the chat and I can definitely loop you in, because that's where we talk about all the progress and where it is in the process. Let's see, I saw Jen's hand go up, and then after that, Patricia.
Hi, thanks so much for sharing this research. I'm curious to learn, like, hear more about your process, the fellows, like, kind of their experience with installing the sensors, like, kind of, how you were locating it, if there were any issues. So one of the I'm just interested in this work in general, but one of the things that I actually heard from, I think it was Scott, because I was doing some work with Healthy Gulf, was kind of this issue of like internet connection with kind of like making sure the monitors have to get online because it's IoT based. So, part of it is like needing to get it on to connect to the Purple Air monitor site. And I'm curious to hear just the experiences of just kind of considerations when you were installing them at the different places. So thank you.
Yeah, I can tackle that. This was something I meant to touch on and just forgot about. I mentioned that the welcome monitor went offline in early June. And so yeah, this was something that was an issue and is an issue in the region, access to kind of reliable Wi-Fi connections and reliable power. Sometimes there are power outages and they go offline. Usually it's pretty easy to kind of like reset them. We had some troubleshooting a few of them, but in searching for volunteers, we kind of wanted to make sure they had access to kind of a Wi-Fi connection and kind of a good power supply. In one of the 3 cases, that turned out to be great. The other 2, Vacherie and Welcome, those went offline. Vacherie went offline late July, so it managed to stay through most of the project period. But yeah, it's an issue. One of the things, we have a few more Purple Airs that we haven't gotten out yet, and working with Scott, one of the things we decided to do was buy a few hotspots to provide a consistent internet connection for places where they don't have Wi-Fi, for instance, or something like that. And so we're exploring that right now. We just haven't been able to get them out currently, but it's an issue. I would argue that the risk is worth the reward of getting uninterrupted data. Oftentimes we had 4 months of data from the St. James location, and we didn't really have the staff to be able to go out and collect SD cards, for instance, if we didn't have them online or that sort of thing. So yeah, definitely a downside to these, but worth the risk and worth the trade-offs.
Patricia?
Sorry, I don't have a professional question. It's a more personal one. I have a sister in a nursing home in New Orleans. Is the air that Formosa is going to be producing going to affect the air in New Orleans that you know of? I don't know how far away it is from. Anybody know?
Well, I'll just talking off the top of my head, air pollution doesn't stay in one place, so it very well could travel. I'm not an expert on air pollution in the region, so I couldn't say in particular whether PM 2.5 concentrations, for instance, would go up. But yeah, more plants in the area, not a good thing.
How far is your
Patricia,
plant? Sorry, how far is
I
your
was gonna
plant
say,
from New Orleans?
Alana, did you have something to add, or?
Oh, I was going to say to Miss Patricia, I have an example. It's from this group of forensic architecture, where they actually modeled the air pollution that was being emitted from these plants and showed how it does move with air and wind, into neighboring regions. Also, Tyler, I think you said you weren't from the region. The Formosa plant is about an hour and a half driving from New Orleans, but I'm not sure exactly miles and distance in that.
You said you had some kind of a chart. Could you email that to me?
It is a video, but I will put the link in the chat. Right.
Oh, I won't be able to work with that. Could you send to me via email if I give you my email address?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, it's patricia.libbey, Libbey, @verizon.net. Thank you.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Let's see, it looks like Ben has his hand up again.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that everybody else got a chance to go, but boy, I've lived here since 1982 for a number of issues. The Army Corps of Engineers, living here in the upper Ninth Ward, close to Poland Avenue, we've been fighting them over the expansion and widening of the industrial canal for years. But looking at both the EPA nationally and the LDEQ locally here, with the Biden administration, and particularly with the passage of the Inflation Reduction Act, do you think there's a chance that agencies like EPA and maybe even locally here will do a little bit better job than protecting the public, in protecting the public?
I just hosted a talk on this yesterday, Ben. In the Inflation Reduction Act, there are two separate areas in which air monitoring can increase. One of them is its funding that goes to the EPA for the EPA to then distribute to actors on like a state or municipal level. So my question, which I want to look into more, is could we as citizens demand that LDEQ take this money and put in more robust air monitoring? I don't know. The second category that makes money available is for nonprofits or partnerships with community groups and states or higher education. It does open up a lot of money for air monitoring. So what's interesting is that with these air monitors here, if another project wants to take over, like, yes, there is funding available through a grant process for community groups that want to do air monitoring. So whether we will see LDQ and EPA expand their monitoring, I know that EPA is bringing in more mobile monitoring outside of the IRA. They had announced that before, but with it, since they just got this passed, they haven't announced yet what the grant process will be to different states or municipalities. So yeah, keep in touch. We will be, there is a talk about this hosted by Taproot Earth. I'll drop the link later on the IRA taking place next Monday. And I'll continue to keep people looped in if you're interested in talking about the IRA more. Does that answer your question?
I think so. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, and I noticed in the chat that Barbara said up in Beaver, Pennsylvania, outside of Pittsburgh, there are folks with purple air monitors, and that some of that data showed how far the pollution does travel in the wind. I don't know, Barbara, if you have anything else you wanted to share on that. I think that's a great observation. So thank you.
I heard a presentation from that group a while ago, so I don't remember all the details. And as I was thinking about it after I had typed, I remember that sulfur was one of the things they were following. And they had people call in when they had high sulfur smells that they could smell in Pittsburgh. And that helped to validate their air monitoring data that they were collecting. So I think that anybody could go back and look at that. It might be the Breathe Project site or another group in Pittsburgh that produced that data, but it was really great to see how far these plumes would travel depending on how the wind was blowing. And that changed, it changed all the time. But the take home message to me personally is wear that PM 2.5 mask that was developed in California because of the forest fires. We don't notice pollution most of the time, but it is not good for us. So especially in Pittsburgh, it's been there for a long time. So everywhere we should be getting purple air monitors that can measure whatever we can measure with it. Thank you for your work.
Thank you, Barbara, for sharing that regional perspective. It's not just Louisiana, it's all over the country, and it's so important to learn from one another. Just before we close out, we only got a couple minutes left, but I saw in the chat a request that some of the folks from our public lab team share about our experiences. And so I was just wondering if Travis wanted to tell the group a little bit more about maybe the origin of the project or kind of what was going on in his mind, and if, what we've learned. So Travis or Caitlion, Tyler, anybody want to talk a little bit about what our process looked like and kind of what we're feeling now?
Y'all can hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, Travis. But now you're muted. There you go.
Hello?
We can hear you.
Hold on, let me go to another part of the room. The Wi-Fi messing up because of the storm.
Yeah,
can
it's
hear me?
storming. We can hear you just fine.
Oh, okay. No, one thing I had, I felt relieved about this project that at least like St. James Parish got something to actually tackle the EIS statement when going against Formosa, because just taking down one permit could stop this plane from coming into St. James Parish, and it was a great opportunity to work with everybody that was included in this project. Everybody like brought in some kind of different skill set, you know, that were needed for the project, whether it was legal, paralegal stuff, technical skills, or even organizing, which that, you know, all those qualities were very, very important. And even like you know, the people that led us into the making sure that this project was at its, you know, doing great and stuff like that. That was all needed as well. So it was a fun project, meeting with people in St. James area and letting them know about the details about what's going on with the particular matter and everything, and getting a lot of folks interested in wanting to know future on data. Even the project that I'm be working on with my new employee, even they got excited about the idea as well. And I just want to say also too that I thank Heart to Home Network for making a presence out here, because I mean on the Zoom call, because they was the first people that actually, you know, gave me my first gig on doing remote jobs and doing like different, like, you know, projects geared towards environmentalism and stuff. And they had helped me during the storm along with Public Lab. They helped me and my family when we went through Hurricane Ida. So I want to put that out there as well and tell y'all thank y'all for, you know, generosity and helping us out.
Thanks so much for sharing that, Travis. Well, if anybody has any other thoughts or comments, go ahead. And if not, I'll turn it back over to Michelle to close us out.
All right. Thank you, everyone. The last thing that I want to leave with you is, let me just share my screen really quick. Okay, I want to invite you to make a profile on our website. It's a pretty simple process. You just need a username, email, bio, so that you can continue to be connected not only to this project, but other projects that the public lab community is working on. People in the website are from all areas of expertise, from scientists, researchers, technologists, as well as organizers. So if you want to sign up, not only to follow other projects, but as well as offer your own expertise, as I said, it's a pretty simple process. And yeah, you can connect with other people that are working on these issues. So yeah, just go to our website. I'll drop the link in the chat. And yeah, I'm gonna stop my share. And I'm gonna stop recording.